Well, thank you, Jillian, so much for joining me today. You focus your practice on the body, basically, folks who struggle with their body image, and that can show up as like eating disorders, or it might show up as just the way that we think about our body. And starting right at the beginning, you take a body positive, health at every size approach. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, so from a body positivity perspective, essentially that's taking the approach where there's acceptance for your body, whether that's its shape, its size, skin tone, gender, different ability levels, coming from this place of finding acceptance for your body in whatever state that it's in, regardless of what you may be told from society or from other people, coming from this place of acceptance within yourself. And you also mentioned the health at every size. And so that part right there is just to say that I don't believe that the sides of your body really can tell you anything about your health. There's so many other markers of health than there is to consider body size. I don't think that's part of the equation. And so oftentimes I think that people talk about losing weight as a way of being healthy. I think it's kind of framed as this is the like healthy thing to do. When really I think that's kind of maybe a bit of a mask for something else. I don't think that health should be at the forefront of that conversation.
Mm.
And I guess just to kind of rewind a second there, when I was talking about body positivity, I think it's also important to talk about body neutrality. I would say that I also take that approach. I think that for some people to think of going from this place where maybe they have some hatred towards their body, they have this strong dislike or, whatever they might feel towards themselves, that going from that place to a place of acceptance, of positivity about their body can be hard. That can feel like a really big jump to some people. And so oftentimes a lot of people find that taking a neutrality stance is an easier step, is maybe more applicable for them. Maybe it just aligns with them better. I know that sometimes for myself, even that's a place that I go to, is that, sometimes it's, if I'm at a place where I'm not feeling the greatest about my body, to try and imagine jumping to that place of positivity, that instead kind of decentering your body from your other thoughts, from your beliefs, from your behaviors, really not putting your body image at the forefront of everything you do, but instead just acknowledging that your body exists and that's okay. It just doesn't have to be good or bad.
Mm.
Yeah, so that is essentially where I come from with that.
So I'm almost imagining as you're talking about this, like a spectrum where on one side you have this like bad relationship with the body, like my body is bad, it's not good the way that it is. Over on the other side, you have like really positive, I love my body's great. And then the neutrality is, somewhere in the middle, my body is. Would you be able to share maybe like a statement that you might hear from a client or just in general of where people might, a statement that might come at each place on the spectrum?
Yeah, okay. With that, if we're coming from the place of somebody who's not doesn't have a very good relationship with their body, they're maybe in this more like negative state about their body. They might say something like, I look horrible in these shorts. Let's say that's what they're saying. And on the other side, if we're going to body positivity, it could be, I thinking I look great, thinking that, I'm, yeah, those are the two extremes there. And I think somewhere in the middle is just, I can wear shorts. I'm wearing shorts. It doesn't need to be I look good, I look bad, just this is what I'm putting on my body today. And so I think that that's a good example to really show the way that different people can be at different places with that, right? That if someone's in this place of hatred saying, my legs look horrible in this, it can be really hard to say, what, I'm accepting my body in these shorts. So maybe that middle ground of just, I'm wearing shorts, nothing about the body.
And I love almost on both ends of the spectrum, there was a real emotionality, like the anger, the hatred, the dislike on the one end, and then the like acceptance or maybe even joy or something over on this. And then the middle, it was just a statement. It was just a fact of like, I'm wearing shorts, I'm choosing to do this. And I can certainly see how that would be a lot easier for some folks, like you say, of like, this is too far to get to this place where I have emotions that are positive around my body. But can I at least make some choices and just base it on fact? I'm going to wear shorts. It's hot out. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that both of those places, whether it's neutrality or positivity, both of those places are beautiful places to be. And that I don't think necessarily positivity needs to be the goal. It doesn't mean that neutrality needs to be a step along, with the goal of getting to this positive place. I think that for a lot of people, neutrality is the place that aligns best with them, and that's okay too. Really the personal preference there, certainly. So I have clients who, really align with wanting to get to that positive place. And I have clients who haven't really been aware of this body neutrality as an option. And so for them, it's really kind of groundbreaking to realize, wait a second, I don't need to center my body in everything I do. I'm allowed to just do.
I love that. I wonder if I can double back way to the beginning, because you said something that I was like, oh, I'm curious there. You talked a little bit about like societal messages. I apologize, I can't remember your exact wording, but you were talking about it when you were talking about body positivity, and that, society has these messages around what our body should be. I'm curious if you could talk about maybe like the impact that you see of these societal messages, maybe on yourself, maybe on clients or people as a whole. Yeah, speak a little bit to those societal messages.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that living in the society that we do, all people are sent different kinds of messages about, what society expects from you, whether it's in the form of like gender norms or body ideals. There's so many different messages that come through, whether that's like the media, as in like TV, movies, whether that's social media, like things on like Instagram or TikTok that you're seeing, that a lot of people are just essentially absorbing this messaging about what's good and what's bad, based on what society tells you. And I think there's so many different systems at play in that kind of can be broken down and look at the different ways that impacts people, and in this case, body image in general. So I think that, when we think of fat phobia is one of the things here that's definitely impacted. We can see how capitalism is attached to all of this too, in that there's the different ways that society is trying to sell you products and tell you you're not good enough because you need to buy these products. There's different things that can come up here in terms of gender inequality, the different messaging that comes depending on your gender. Yeah, there's so many things there.
Absolutely, all these different messages that we're getting sent that ultimately, for some reason or another, tell us our body in the way that it is probably isn't right. And even that people who have the right body, I've seen in my practice, they still struggle. They have the ideal body that society says you should. And, I feel gross even saying that. And yet
I like the quotations.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet they're still saying, this is wrong with my body or that's wrong. Because I think the message is almost your body is wrong, that I don't think you can ever get to a place where your body is right. So getting there is impossible if we're listening to these societal standards.
Certainly, yeah. And that's exactly what you see, right? Where there's people who maybe have lived their whole life in a bigger body and who have thought, I need to get to this smaller place, this place where people who are in smaller bodies, they must be happy with themselves, right? And then you see so many people who are in these smaller bodies that still have been told for whatever reason something's not good enough, whether we're talking about body size, if we're talking about weight, if we're talking about facial features, if we're talking about skin color, ability levels, all these things that I kind of listed earlier, that there's so many different ways that body image is impacted here. I know a lot of times when we talk about body image, it's kind of body size that comes up. But there's so many different ways that people can be impacted by that, and the different messaging that they're receiving from society, from different parts of society. And I know I was talking about kind of the bigger systems a minute ago, but there's also on a smaller scale that can have big impact is people like family members making comments, friends making comments, partners, those kinds of things too. Certainly, just being that everyone exists under these systems, that, there's essentially no one is safe from this different messaging. And so that means that unfortunately, a lot of times individuals continue to perpetuate that in society because they maybe don't know any different.
Mm-hmm. That's huge right there, that without that awareness, we end up perpetuating some of these beliefs. And I think we even do it to ourselves in some ways, that we're kind of, we become our own worst enemy, so to speak, around our body. And I'm curious, from your clinical perspective, why does that happen? Why are people kind of turning on themselves and perpetuating these messages that maybe aren't serving them, aren't helping them?
Yeah. Uh, Certainly. I think that a lot of times what it boils down to is when society is constantly giving you these messages, telling you that you're not enough, telling you that you're bad or you're not worthy, that these beliefs get kind of internalized. And it may sound kind of counterintuitive, but as a protective, it does this as like a protective part, that, you know, if society is telling you that you're bad, that you're wrong, if I believe these things about myself, that's going to encourage me to want to change myself, change my body, change these things that make me bad in society.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll be accepted, then I'll be better. And I think that so often that's the route that people go down, to say, I kind of, if I beat myself to the punch, if I tell people that I know that I'm bad, I know that I'm wrong, and I'm going to do better, that's how I'll get the acceptance, as opposed to this internal place of acceptance or neutrality that we've been talking about, that for so many people that doesn't feel like an option. It feels like once you get to that certain place, once I lose the weight, once I change these things, then I'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so often what you see. So holding those beliefs and really putting them into practice in terms of your behaviors and your feelings and your thoughts, that for a lot of people, that's the place of protection.
Oh, I was feeling that when you're saying that we essentially just want this acceptance. And we think if my body is a certain way, I'll get that. And so if I tell you that I know that, then you'll accept me, even if I'm not there yet. But at the core, it's just about wanting acceptance. And I love what you said there, that if we don't have that, sorry, we won't, the goal isn't to get that through changing our body. The goal is how can we find that in other ways, that we don't need to change our body in order to get that feeling of acceptance from the self and then also from others.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Let's say that I am coming to counseling because I struggle. Let's make up the scenario that I struggle with my body, its size, and I maybe have some disordered eating. So maybe I have a bunch of rules around what I can and what I can't eat, good foods, bad foods. And I'm coming to you because I don't like my body and I want my body to change. And I'm saying, I know that some of my eating is really bad eating and that I'm probably doing it because, I'm too lazy. I don't really focus on eating properly. Help me with this, Jillian. Tell me from your perspective of kind of how you approach this, what would counseling look like? How would you support me if I came to you with those pieces?
Yeah. I I got a little excited hearing you explain kind of the scenario, because this is the work that I love so much. And that is something that I see so often. Yeah, there's so many pieces there. I'm trying to think of kind of where to start. I guess, this kind of follows what we were just talking about in terms of that protective piece. So I think that there'd be a lot of exploring kind of, why is it that you feel like you need to do this? What is it that you're trying to gain out of changing your body, and one thing that I would certainly make clear off the bat there is that my job as a counselor isn't to change your body in any way, that's not necessarily the goals that we're going to be working on. So I'd be looking more at, what are those underlying goals? So why is it that your goal is to change your body? What is that underlying thing, and how can we help you get to that place? Another thing that really stands out to me, that I just kind of wanted to jump on, was that, like, good foods, bad foods. I wholeheartedly do not believe in good foods and bad foods. So I'd explore some about that too, about what are these supposed good foods and bad foods, and what is the relationship that you have with food. I know you mentioned that there's some disordered eating there. I'd be curious about what that is. I guess if I just added to the scenario, if, let's say, that you're kind of binge eating, you're going through and you're eating a bunch of food at one point, And then there's maybe some regret that comes afterwards of, why did I let myself do that? I'd really want to explore more about that. I'll say that oftentimes when people come in and I speak with them about eating in particular, that there's a lot of shame that people have around the joy that they get from eating food.
Mm-hmm.
That I've seen clients
Mm-hmm.
come in and be really bothered by the fact that food makes them happy. And so, if that was the case here, I'd really want to talk about why there's that shame that you found a way to make yourself feel happy. Really instead pointing out the ways that if you're in this place where you're really struggling with yourself, and maybe you're struggling with other things outside of this too, that look at you finding a way to make yourself feel better. And instead, why do we want to take away something that makes you feel good? And so instead working with the shame around that, as opposed to saying we need to change the way you're eating, let's work at going through the emotions you have around that. And instead maybe working with the shame that comes afterwards, as opposed to the behavior of eating, when that's a tool to bring yourself joy, to maybe to cope with whatever you're feeling.
I love that. And I'm thinking kind of culturally too, that food is so important. And when we're removing that, we're removing such a connection to culture and maybe to family, to greater systems that can serve us, that we're just robbing ourselves of all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think that you see that a lot of times too, just with different messaging again, where it's, I have to like earn my birthday cake, or, I can't go over and have a meal at grandma's house because she's gonna make all of this fatty foods, or, whatever people might say, that the things that are kind of lost there, that you aren't able to allow yourself the permission to attend to, that are so much bigger than food. Yeah.
So I want to double back, because you said you wholeheartedly don't believe in good foods and bad foods. What's the alternative? Because there is such a societal message that, like, I'll name that a message that I've heard many times is like, carbs are bad. You shouldn't be eating carbs. So what's the alternative to kind of putting foods into these categories of like good, healthy foods or unhealthy foods?
Yeah, honestly, when you're saying that, I'm thinking of kind of the comparison that we started this with, of I hate my body, to this place of body positive. I feel so positive about my body. And that there's this neutrality in the middle. And I kind of think of that here too, right? We don't need to like demonize some foods as these are all horrible, like sugar or carbs, or, whatever society does in fact say. I know I've heard that messaging too. We all have, instead of putting that over here, and maybe like vegetables are in this positive place. Instead, there can be this middle ground of just food is food, and food is fuel. Food is something that you need. And we don't need to pick it apart so much. Instead, really just listening to your body and seeing what it is that you want. I think that when it comes to health, when we're thinking about, eating healthy, the way that society tries to say, I really think about eating for your mental health too. Like if it is eating these cookies is going to make me happy right now, what a healthy choice to make yourself feel happy. Like what a gift you can give yourself in doing that.
Oh, I so love that food's purpose isn't only about like the body, so to speak, that food's purpose can also be mentally. And so that brings in that cultural piece you were talking about, like go to grandma's for your birthday dinner, that can bring so much joy there. Maybe it's the cookies that make you feel good after a long day. Why are we shaming it when it's actually serving our mental health?
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's such a big one, I think it can be a radical idea to some people, when, again, we're saying society really ingrains these messages. Growing up, you're given like the little food charts and the hierarchy, it really is drilled into our heads, that a lot of people don't realize that there's kind of other perspectives outside of that doesn't have to be the way it is. And that doing these things under like the guise of health really oftentimes isn't so healthy.
Mm, hmm hmm So I feel like there's been kind of implied throughout our whole conversation different things that people could kind of consider doing or think about a little bit differently in order to support maybe a better relationship with And I almost don't want to say better because I love your body neutrality, maybe a more of a neutral relationship with the body. But I'm curious if you could maybe explicitly state some ideas or some things that people could try or could do if they are struggling to have either a good or a neutral relationship with their body for whatever reason that might be.
Yeah, I think that the things we've talked about today could be such a big perspective shift to a lot of people, that even just the realization that, oh, it doesn't have to be that way, that, you know, someone here, I'll say that the two of us today are giving people permission to think otherwise, you know, that people can kind of hear that as like, oh, wait a second, that's an option.
Mm-hmm.
um, I think that can be really big for people, just to kind of remember in those moments of maybe shame spirals that you might be experiencing, because why did I let myself eat that? Or, you know, when you're getting dressed in the morning and maybe you're not feeling so good, remembering that there's other options, you know, that you don't have to feel that way. And also, if you do right now, that's okay too. You know, there's a lot of unlearning that has to be done here, and just the act of realizing other options, I think, is really big, and isn't to
Mm-hmm.
be kind of skipped over. That, yeah, this is really drastically different to some people. And so I'll also say that something that personally for me has helped is changing up my social media, following different accounts. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you have these algorithms that maybe are sending you messages that really aren't serving you, you know, if you end up on kind of the wrong side of social media, where you're getting all these diet and weight loss and, you know, these kinds of things that are sent to you, how harmful that can be to be constantly surrounded by that. And so instead, maybe thinking about diversifying that social media a little bit, following accounts that promote um, things along this, whether it's body neutrality or body positivity, or just people existing in different bodies, that can be really powerful too, because in that sense, the algorithm can start sending you things that are maybe more aligned with where you want to be, and can
Mm-hmm.
help remind you that that's an option too.
I love that because, as you said earlier, social media has such a strong impact on the societal messages that we receive. So let's be intentional about the societal messages we're getting. And
Mm,
that to me kind of leads to this idea of like setting boundaries with people in your life who maybe are at a different place and have different beliefs about their body. Maybe saying, I don't want to hear these things.
mm.
Is that something that you advise or work with clients to achieve if that feels right for them?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that for a lot of clients that can be hard. I think that for some people, what kind of comes first is that recognition in themselves, that they give themselves the permission to think differently,
Mm-hmm.
allow themselves time to kind of sit into that and feel confident in that, um, before they're able to kind of communicate this to other people. And for other people, it's kind of the reverse. It's, I need other people to support me in this. I need other people to remind me that it's okay to do it this way. But certainly that, you know, when we said that sometimes the opinions of other people's other loved ones can be kind of a detriment, sometimes can put you, kind of keep you in maybe a negative space, but that's also to say that there's a lot of power in having other people be able to support you, and for you to
Mm-hmm.
prioritize yourself. So, you know, whether that's letting, I don't know, let's say letting mom know, I don't want you to make comments on how much I'm eating today, I don't need those comments. um, yeah, like setting those kind of boundaries, or just explaining where you're at to other people, and hope that they're able to respect that and maybe even support you in that.
Mm-hmm. It's coming up for me just how unique each journey can be for each person. Right here, you're saying for some people it makes sense to um, kind of change that within and then get support. And for other people, it's the reverse. And previously, you were talking of some people, the goal is to get to body neutrality. That's what they want. And other people, it's body positivity. And I
Mhm.
think that's what's really beautiful is that each person's journey can look so unique, and we're not trying to do a one size fits all. That's the whole problem, is that there has been this one size fits all. So let's explore what that looks like for that person and tailor it to them.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I love kind of the wording there of one size fits all, as we're talking about in terms of like counseling approaches, but also just as we're talking about this topic of like body image and stuff, you know, that society is trying to tell you there's one size, that's the ideal. And really not only are we saying that otherwise in terms of people existing in different bodies, but also in terms of different approaches in counseling. Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of fit two different there.
I'm trying to like rephrase it in my mind of like, everyone has a unique size, or we need to have something so much cooler and more accepting than the one size fits all. But I love that of, yeah, that counseling is that process, as is your body, as is your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jillian, for taking the time to talk with me today. I'm really excited about our conversation. I also absolutely love doing this work and doing like thinking and spending time in this space. So thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today about it.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. I loved having the space to talk. I of course love these things too. So thanks so much.